everyone's playing the lowest price game. So you go to Amazon and there's tons of overseas vendors competing for the same cable at the lowest price. As a consumer, we don't know the difference. Another aspect is something we talked about. We used to have in-person stores with product managers that would manually check and verify. This technology and the ability to access it virtually has almost removed that human touch from the verification and quality control.
Absolutely. I just saw this year more YouTube videos of people trying to put together a gaming rig. So they have to order all these parts. And they're talking about getting motherboards that have already been used or getting defective parts or parts that have been damaged in shipping. But the most important part of this, and this was the interesting part of the video exercise, is not their stories. It's actually their sentiment that they're alone. They don't feel supported. Tech support doesn't know enough in many cases, and everyone feels like they're faking it. They're doing it for the very first time. And what I find horrible is that if you say thousands of dollars to build something, and then you get it and all the parts are suspect, and then you are now spending not just your money, but you are being ripped off by someone else who has skated on some spec or something. And I find it just so unfair, because what is your recourse? Because you're not a computer engineer. You're not going to be able to really determine what's wrong. You just hope it works. So then you return everything. And I've seen people in a very vicious cycle of returning things, and then they give up and they just basically said, no, I never built that because it was too hard. That happens more often than people are willing to admit. And how many people have computers and things in their homes that they've given up trying to maintain?
Absolutely.
Tons.
Absolutely. And there's so many cheap options. Why would I spend all that time and frustration to try to fix it if I'm not a technologist, when I can just buy another cheap one?
Going back to the cables, I just realized that if I'm doing a new project, there's going to be, a shrinkage budget, which is in retail the term of things just disappearing. Well, for me, the shrinkage budget is the amount of manufacturers that are actually lying about their specs, meaning I have to try out boxes because I can't trust what I'm actually reading. That actually occurred when I was putting together my new network of my new lab when I moved here to Dallas, and several boxes just didn't meet the specs they were advertising. So it's really telling that we're in a world now where, trust but verify is really the only vernacular that you must adhere to. And especially if you're spending your hard-earned money, be prepared to send things back. Don't compromise. It's interesting. Our standards do work if the cables and the devices have all got complimentary handshaking by all the protocols being honored correctly. The chips in these cables, if they are not generic, or I shouldn't say generic, not fake, if they are real chips that have been produced by the USB, there's a whole USB committee, these chips are really good. So the odds of these devices not working as intended should be much less than they are. And one more important factor is that we have the testing equipment now when we're building the cables to make the cables totally tested before they go to market, and all this technology is available. So the fact that we're getting bad cables is a decision. It's not based on it being hard to make.
Oof. That kind of sums up this whole thing, right? Companies are willing to sacrifice their credibility by competing on price. It leaves consumers in a pretty helpless state. So what are some of the recommendations? You recommended these for testing wires. What about other types of devices, or even things like headphones and other tech?
Well, it's interesting. Headphones is a much more nuanced space because people's ears are all different, and I would never go into a headphone space of what's a good headphone or a bad. But let's talk about a really good space. Let's think about this for a second.
So podcasting's big. There's microphones.
Right, microphones.
Setups.
Well, but I was going to think of something more to do with, let's talk about appliances. Today in America, you have more choices for appliances, but what people are unaware of is most appliances, especially because of the EU and because of green mandates, were mandated to actually reduce the weight of machines. And by reducing the weight of standard appliances, we've actually made them inferior, and they do not last as long. And the average appliance now lasts 5 years. You can get a Speed Queen that will last 20, and it's twice as much money, and it's twice as much weight. So basically, it's not as environmentally friendly, but since I don't have to build 2 machines in the same period of time, it beats the machine that I have to build twice. Now, what's interesting is we always seem to get things wrong when we're trying to improve our technologies, because we have policymakers who think, oh, I'm going to be green, so I'm going to suggest that we can make appliances lighter and we can make them more energy efficient, and industry will figure it out. But sometimes we're forcing conclusions that are not possible. And we do this often. And then what happens is the consumer's caught in the crossfire. And a lot of the reasons why our products aren't the same as they used to be is environmentalism and reducing packaging, reducing shipping costs, reducing weight, and then finally using computers to basically design products with the least amount of materials in them to save every single nickel, dime, and penny. So when you're trying to save every penny and you're willing to take shortcuts, it means you're going to leave a resistor or a capacitor out that might make the product more impervious to a short or a surge. You might harden your ribbon cable on like Apple laptops so the cable doesn't break. You might make a Surface laptop that Microsoft made have a detachable battery in some form so the whole surface doesn't become obsolete when the battery goes dead. And if you're going to take the battery out, it is almost impossible to take the screen off without breaking the screen. So you ultimately need a new screen if you're going to replace the battery. Again, and the whole idea is, well, you need a new laptop after 3 years. Do you? Do most people today need more power than they had 3 years ago to surf? Do most people need more power today other than gamers who need more enhanced graphics card and eventually might need a new rig? But that's 5 to 7 years, not 3. And unfortunately, everything seems to be designed to fail within 3 to 5 years. And I think that's too short. And I think things should be fixable. And I think then we could make more products if things were fixable that were cool. And we could come up with innovations to add on to those products. And we could be nice to planet Earth, and we could be nice to our pocketbooks. And at the same time, we could invent things that people want to buy. And that's how it should work. But unfortunately, in this reality, consumerism means that products have to die. And it's obvious that's how they're being designed.